Hello, and welcome to the Laddercast, where we teach you how to leverage your assets to change your life. I'm Sorsha Porter, and in 2016, I bought my first home, which completely changed the trajectory of my life. I turned that property into a business, a trip around the world, a new career, and quadrupled my household income. And now I'm a real estate agent licensed in Oregon and Washington.
And I'm Shannon McAllister. After finishing college with a degree in finance, I was in a job I hated but couldn't quit because I wasn't making enough money. I signed up for a class to learn about mortgages taught by a real estate investor. 17 years later, I'm a nationally licensed mortgage lender, homeowner, and investor myself. We aim to educate how getting on the property ladder by owning just one home can change lives. It changed ours.
Hello, and welcome back to the Laddercast. Today, we have a very exciting topic, one that we get a lot of questions about: how to start an Airbnb.
Right. And today we're going to talk just the logistics. We have another episode where we've gone over and reviewed different types of rentals, the benefits, disadvantages of Airbnbs versus other types of rentals.
That's episode 6, if you want to check it out.
Got it? So these are the logistics. If you have chosen to do an Airbnb or you're considering it, you have a lot of things to figure out and get in order, and here's a pretty good list of them.
Yeah, the highlight is you're setting up a business.
That is what you're doing.
So first thing you do is you set up an account with Airbnb as a host, and you follow the steps that they prompt you through, which includes taking you to your local municipality's website for regulations, requirements, and permits. In Portland, you actually have to set up a formal business entity and register it with the city. Mm-hmm. And there's permitting involved in that and fees involved in that. And then with your business license, you obtain an accessory short-term rental permit. Mm-hmm. And we're referencing Portland because this is where we live.
Sure.
And where I have experience with Airbnbs. But just know, check your local municipality. That's the highlight here is make sure you check. Another part that you need to consider, at least here in Portland, is you got to notify your neighbors in writing with a special form that you're starting an Airbnb. And then the Development Services Department reviews your application, and if approved, your permit is mailed to you.
Okay. That's a lot of steps already. We're only at the first bullet. That's a lot of things.
This is the first things you got to do.
So that's just here in town and where we are. These are the requirements you must follow in order to operate an Airbnb within Portland city limits. Every city is different, of course, but there is some version of this. You are operating a business out of your home, and there are likely to be requirements that you must follow. So the first step is get on Airbnb, figure out what you got to do with them, and then figure out what you got to do with the city that you live in to make this happen legally.
Yep, it's really important to follow your local city's requirements. You do not want to get fined or punished for doing it the wrong way because, unfortunately, ignorance is not an excuse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're setting up a business out of your residence. You have to follow protocols and guidelines. Do that. Do things right, please. Okay. We got ourselves a business. We got ourselves some permits and we got approved. Now that we're approved to do business, now we need to build our business model. How are we going to operate? What do we do? What does our business look like? How do we run things?
Are you going to hire a manager or self-manage your unit? Most managers charge 30 to 45%.
Okay.
And that's a lot. That's a lot of money. At that point, you might as well have a long-term rental because that's about how much more Airbnbs make than long-term rentals.
But the counterpoint to that is, instead of, if you do not choose to hire a manager, you're going to self-manage, which I don't know that I can accurately explain to you the amount of work that takes.
I can. It's a lot.
Okay.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, especially at first, because you're not just starting a new business. You're also learning one. Mm-hmm. But if you have a full-time job, especially one that's inflexible, you might want to consider hiring a manager or potentially working out with a friend who doesn't work full-time to help you manage it at some sort of amicable agreement that benefits you both.
Sure. It is a lot of hands-on management. There is the management of the business, which is managing tenants coming in and out, your bookings. There's the turnover, there's the bookkeeping, there is the upkeep, the maintenance, all of the things that it takes to run a business. And it is a lot of time, effort, and energy.
It is. I think there is a school of thought out there, particularly on the interwebs, where there's people like Robuilt or Bigger Pockets talking about all the advantages to having a short-term rental. And there are a lot of advantages, and those places do have some great resources. But I think they kind of make it oversimplified, even though all those guys have built really successful businesses. Like Robuilt has a really successful business doing Airbnb. But I think it's been a while since they've done it, and they've kind of forgotten how much work it is on the upfront
to get started.
They've developed really slick systems and processes and have a lot of employees now. But the initial upstart is a lot of friggin' work.
Okay. All right. So we've made a decision whether we're going to self-manage or we're going to hire a manager. Okay. Now, bookkeeping. I think this probably should have been number one, but you now own a business. You are responsible for keeping books and filing tax returns accordingly. You need to bookkeep.
Yep.
And if you don't know how, you get someone who does.
Bookkeeper costs like $50 to $75 an hour. Just keep that in mind.
Okay. But you can't just figure it out at the end of the year.
No, this is not a fly by the seat of your pants situation.
No. So bookkeeping is important. Figure out your system early and in advance and follow it, please.
So that when you go to finance a home with Shannon, she's not like, where's all your bookkeeping records?
I have really good Airbnb income, but I got no tax returns.
Like, oh, I didn't know I need to report that.
You do. This is all reportable income.
This is all reportable income, and the city will know about it, so they will request taxes from you.
That they will.
Then you need to think about how you're going to communicate with your guests. I use a platform called Guesty. It's really popular amidst the Airbnb management crowd. It essentially allows me to create templates and automate my communications to guests based on timelines within the check-in process. So when they register, I send them a thank you for registering email with the dates of their trip. And when a week before, it sends them a reminder email with a request for some information about them. So for example, if it's a place that has a parking spot, I want to know what color their car is and what kind of car they're bringing so that I don't just have a random person pulling into the driveway. Or if you are providing food options for your guests, asking about allergies is a good idea, both for a courtesy standpoint and liability standpoint, things like that.
Sure. But setting up a system to effectively and clearly communicate with your guests is very important. I think we've all been in an Airbnb where communication has been terrible and you've been locked out of your unit and you are trying to call somebody who doesn't answer their phone at 10 p.m. at night when you've driven into town.
Yep.
We've all had that.
You don't want
terrible.
That. That's how you get a bad review.
So communication is important, and you need a system and a structure to make that happen efficiently and effectively for all parties.
And you need to set it up before you start booking guests.
Oh, yes. You need to have this system. It's a system that makes your business run, and you need to choose that system and set it up so that it runs.
Yep. Then you need to look at building a rule book as you're getting your listing online. What are you going to allow, disallow? What do guest needs to need to know about the unit they're staying in? Think about things that annoy you or might annoy your neighbors, like staying up late and playing music. If that's something that's going to annoy you, you should put in a sound curfew for a certain period of time.
Sure. The rules that your guests need to abide by to stay in your unit. What are you going to allow them to do or not to do and ask them to do or not to do?
The assumption that everybody will have the same courtesy that you will is wrong. You need to tell them what the courtesy is. So pets, extra guests.
Wait, can I tell you about that courtesy? Yeah. I have a lovely story for that. The neighbor next to me, there are 3 small cottages on the property next to me that are all part of one unit. That's not very clear, but 3 individual cottages all on one property. There was a tenant in the back unit who rented all 3 with the intention of Airbnb in the front 2.
Oh, I love this story.
That's great. She pretty much allowed the front 2 to be party houses. There were no rules in her listings about partying, things like this. Old lady, went stomping in and broke up a college graduation party in my pajamas and glasses.
Oh my God.
With a bunch of kids who were just having a nice time, but it was also midnight in my neighborhood. Go home.
Like, I need to sleep.
Party's over, go home. But these are things that
you really
whether
have to
she
think about.
permitted or not, she wasn't also following up on what her guests were doing and what was happening in the units that she managed. And so these are things that you need to think about, lest you get very angry neighbors and the old woman next to you shows up in her pajamas and glasses to shut you down.
Well, and I think on top of that, you need to consider that like cities like Portland require you to notify your neighbors of what you're doing. And that means that your neighbors have an opportunity to object to your use as a short-term rental with the city directly. Don't give them reasons to do that.
I unfortunately am not within Portland city limits, and I was not notified.
Yeah. I don't know if it's required for you here in no man's land that you live in.
Yeah.
Shannon lives in Narnia. We've been over this before. She lives in the forest just outside the city limits, and it's beautiful.
If you're going to have an Airbnb, come up with a set of guidelines and rules that you'd like your guests to abide by and manage to them, please. Don't make your neighbors angry. That's a very quick way to get complaints through Airbnb, which I did for that girl, in an effort to try to get her shut down because it became
annoying.
It became an annoyance and an unhappy neighborhood.
So consider imposing curfews. Make sure you're charging for things like pets or extra guests, and at what point does that happen? Are you expecting people to do their laundry and dishes?
Please don't do that. I am not paying to stay in your unit and paying a cleaning fee and doing your laundry.
And and definitely consider that whatever rules you impose affect the overall quality of experience that your guest has, and think about what you would want or not want as a guest during that process.
Right? You've stayed in an Airbnb. What were the good and bad experiences that you've had?
Yep.
And how are you going to take all of those experiences and turn that into your unit to make a happy, nice place that people want to stay in and that are going to leave you good reviews and become a profitable business for you?
Yeah.
Right? All right. So we're making a rule book. We're coming up with all these things. And also, we have all experienced the 42-page rule book in a binder on the dining room table that we're supposed to read as guests. Please don't do that.
Don't do that. I literally, as part of my guestie setup, when they check in, I give them the rules that are important for check-in, like the curfew, the, please timelines and stuff. And when they check out, I'm like, okay, please remember to lock the door. Please, check for garbage on the floor and your belongings under the bed. But for the most part, I don't have our guests do much because, like Shannon, I agree that that's dumb.
Well, but so you're setting up your rules, your house, your rules. What do you want your guests to abide by, and be clear about it? As long as your communication and expectations are clear, you're generally going to have a good experience both ways. So that's important.
And then you need to set up travel guides or guest books within the Airbnb system.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, this is a thing. So you don't actually have to do this, but I recommend it. It helps you on the algorithm with Airbnb and getting pushed further up. Your guest books can be highlighted on the website, which will get you more eyes on your unit. So for example, I have one that's like the ultimate Portland 3-day weekend. And I suggest like 6 different restaurants of varying types. So like brunch places, dinner places, bars and things. And then I suggest like 4 to 6 different activities that happen on the weekends. And that's how my little book is set up. So I write a little blurb about each item and why I like it and why it's great. So like the Portland Japanese Garden is our Japanese garden is the #1 Japanese garden in the United States.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's a wonderful place. I did not know that.
It was the thing I Googled when I was setting up the guest book. But yeah, so it's important. It's important for the experience of the guest to go that extra step.
All right, so we're going to do that extra work in setting up our business to put those things together, both for the benefit of your customers and to get your listing seen on Airbnb. That's great. We're going to do that work. Here's a biggie. The next one on our list is a biggie. Cleaning. Who's doing the cleaning? Are you the cleaning person or are you hiring a cleaning person?
This is the thing that trips up the most Airbnb hosts, because what you don't realize is that you have to manage people through this process. You need to manage a cleaning crew. And if your cleaning crew doesn't make it, you're the cleaning crew. So you have to think about that in advance. I've had it where I know people who've had cleaning crews not show up and it was messy when the next guest checked in and they've lost. The way to prevent them from giving a terrible review is to refund them for their trip and let them stay for free. Mm-hmm. So things like that are really important, and you need to think about it and plan it in advance and be ready for one of those people to drop out.
There are lots of considerations in this. Again, we have all stayed in an Airbnb that isn't as clean as your home would be, and it's pretty icky.
Yeah.
That might be someone else's version of spotlessness. So you need to determine what your level of clean means and what you expect your unit to look like at each turn.
Also, Airbnb has cleaning guidelines post-COVID that you have to abide by.
Cool. So are you doing it? This is a big time commitment. This is a big job. It takes a lot of effort and energy, depends on how often your unit is turned and these things. Are you instead going to hire a crew? You have a couple of options there. Are you going to hire a company who does this? Or are you going to hire an individual who is trying to make a living by being a unit cleaner? I don't know that that's the word that they use, but something along those lines. I'll give you an example. I have some friends who have chosen to do option C. Option C is a real rough go, in my opinion. It is managing people. You now have contract employees. They aren't technically your employees. You're not paying them hourly on a fixed schedule. They're technically contracted. So while they are invested, they're not that invested.
Yeah.
And they tend to overbook and overschedule themselves because they are trying to make a living, and it is a very hard living, and they are limited to the hours they have available to them. So they are booking a lot and often, and oftentimes don't do their scheduling that matches up with yours, right?
Yeah.
And so there's my friends constantly have a cleaning kerfuffle because somebody has canceled. They need to find somebody to come in quick. That is hard. They have had guests arrive where their cleaner hadn't yet made it for the day, and it was past check-in time. It's a constant struggle to get this under control. Yeah,
it's a whole process. That's one of the things that Guesty actually will help you manage is your cleaners. It will allow you to automatically share their checkout time and stuff with the cleaner so that you can send your cleaners automatic messages as to when you need them and have them confirm with you through Guesty, which is pretty cool.
That's convenient.
It is very convenient. It's a good platform, and it's free to sign up.
Interesting. But these are things you need to think of. They're all costs. They're all time.
Average cleaning fee on Airbnb is like $125. Okay. That's pretty standard across the board. And also, don't dicker with your cleaners on what you're going to pay them. When they come in and they're like, I would charge $85 for this. Don't be like $65. Just pay them what they want, and they are more likely to show up for you.
Sure. Good rule of thumb in life.
Pay people what they're worth.
So that's a huge one to figure out, get it right, get it tight.
And it takes time. And you have to be willing to step in when it doesn't work out. So that because your whole business model is based on reviews. Yeah. So now your business model set up.
Okay, we did all these things. We now have a business model that is under control. We have our rules of operation, how we're going to run our business, the rules for our guests, the rules for ourselves. We have hired a bookkeeper.
We're ready to rock and roll, and now we look at the unit itself.
Okay, this is our commodity. This is what we're selling here. Yeah. This is the important part.
I like to set up units the way that I set up houses for staging. I like to tell people a story about how to use the space and how it should look. And I try and make it so that it's appealing to a lot of people, but not super bland and boring. We've all been to a house where all the staging stuff was gray and white, and the house kind of all blurs into the background. Same with the decor in a vacation rental. How many vacation rentals or cabins in the woods have you rented where you showed up and it's clearly like someone's grandma's furniture that has been forgotten is dappled across the unit between IKEA things? Like that's
mishmash. Yeah. Mishmash of stuff. Get stuff where you can get it from and throw it all together, which works.
It works, but you're not going to make the kind of money or get the kind of interest that you would if you're intentional about how you set up the space. Okay. So for example, I have one client who has a 250 square foot micro unit in a super walkable area. And so we set him up with a very cute bedspread, and it looks really nice. We have nice wall decorations that are inexpensive, like macrame, that stand out online. We have a couple of plants, but one of the things I made sure to do was that I had him build a little custom tiny wood table for eating at and working at. That's a live edge table that really stands out and pops online when you show the listing. So you have to think about the decor items you put in and make sure it's dialed. Make sure it's something that someone's going to stop and want to look at, because you're competing with hundreds of other people.
Sure.
So if your home looks like IKEA and grandma's house had an explosion, it's probably not going to stand out as much as the super cute dialed listing that it's next to.
Which means that your photos that you take of your super cute and dialed furniture have to be good. Because that's the first thing. When we all go to Airbnb to look, the first thing we look at is we probably sort by price, and then we look at the photos according to the price range we're trying to be in.
Yep, your pictures need to be good. So you need to account, if you're not a photographer or someone who knows how to take photography for vacation rentals or real estate, you need to hire someone, and that's a cost you need to consider in the setup. Not to mention the cost of the furniture itself.
Yep.
And then you got to write up a very compelling description that lists all your neighboring amenities and describe your unit accurately. And this is really important, because I think the biggest thing that happens that I hear as like a negative side effect of Airbnbs is not clearly communicating what people are supposed to expect. That's how most relationships fall apart, is missed expectations.
Sure. As an Airbnb user, I have never listed a property myself. I've never been an Airbnb host. But as a guest, the property, if you do not describe your property accurately, it makes me mad. I need to know what's in there. And I am less concerned about a 45-minute drive to here. I can get a map myself. Thank you very much. Yeah. I need to know exactly what's happening in the property, in the house, so that my expectations are met, and so are yours. I don't need a 45-paragraph long description of the town I'm going to, because I'm going to get that elsewhere. I need to know what it is I am paying money to rent. Please be concise, descriptive, and accurate.
What kind of parking situation is there? Is there air conditioning? Is there not air conditioning? How do I operate the air conditioning? Is there anyone else living on the property I should know about? Which is important, like for places like Portland, where you need to be a resident of the property or Airbnb for 270 nights out of the year.
Sure.
So you need to say, if you're going to be there, owner may be on premises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So be accurate about those things. I'll give you an example of that. I have a friend here in town who has a basement unit that they Airbnb out. In her neighborhood, there is no parking. If they're going to park their personal cars on their street, they have to buy a permit from the city annually. There is no guest parking, there is no garage, there is no driveway. So her unit is walkers only. You cannot park a car. And I wondered, I said, well, is that detracting from your business?
Oh, I bet people love it.
Well, she just accurately describes it, makes sure that everybody is well aware in advance, and the people who book her unit are the people who come intentionally not to rent a car. Yep. She is in a walkable area. She lists where the transit points are, and the people who choose her unit are the ones who specifically don't want to rent a car.
Yep.
Be accurate, be consistent with your information.
Exactly. If you are close to public transit, detail that. How close? What kind of public transit? If you are close to grocery stores and cafes and bars, detail that lightly, but just like make sure that they know if you are in Gresham and they're coming for a convention center event in inner Southeast Portland, that they are aware that you are in Gresham.
Mm-hmm. You need a car for that example, but don't tell me that I'm close to a grocery store and then it's a 45-minute walk. Yeah. Be accurate, be concise, and descriptive.
Yep. Also, this was a tip I got from another realtor who has her own Airbnbs. Stay in your unit one night. Before you start listing it online, stay in the unit and experience it as a guest yourself.
Yeah. That was brilliant.
I think it was the best advice I've gotten about Airbnb, and it allows you to tweak and change things after staying there. You know, did it get really hot in the middle of the night? Do I need to consider like changing the schedule of my AC to come on? Do I need to look at maybe including coffee as a thing first thing in the morning? Like stay in it the way you would if you were a guest checking in.
That's great. I like that one a lot. Okay. Is our unit done? Our unit's ready. We've decorated it very nice. We've done nice photos. Our listing is accurate. We know exactly who we're targeting, and we've marketed to them accurately. I think we're ready to go live, yeah?
Yeah, we go live. At that point, you need to set your prices and set up your calendar. and make sure that you are incentivizing new people to book your unit. The easiest way to do that is by offsetting your lack of reviews as a new Airbnb with price. So if the average price of a unit in your area is $125 a night, maybe consider listing for $75 or $85 a night, so that when people go to look in your area, they're like, oh, well, this one is way cheaper. And they're more likely to overlook the fact that you're newer and don't have a lot of reviews, because that's how you build this business, is through a positive review basis.
Okay. And we incentivize people to book our units when we don't have reviews to offer by lowering our price for a while.
That's the easiest way to do it.
All right. I can get down with that.
You can set it up on Airbnb to have like your first 3 guests get an additional 20% off.
Okay.
Depending on how much you want to do. You can also incentivize people to book for longer periods of time by giving larger percentage discounts for a 1-month stay.
Sure.
So if you would average $2,000 a month with like 3 people or 4 people coming to stay, maybe consider offering $1,800 for a 1-month stay to one person. Less turnover, less work.
Okay.
So on and so forth.
But just because we're discounting our listing price doesn't mean we discount the level of experience we give our customers.
Correct. Yeah. You have to provide excellent experience. I mean, it's like any service or commodity. If it's not good, people are not going to enjoy paying for it. Sure. And they're going to make that known.
Sure. Okay. Whew. That was a lot.
That was a lot.
But it takes a lot to make an Airbnb run and make money on it and be successful.
It does. And it takes time. And I think that there is a mindset out there that you just like list it online and you automate it and you go, because there's a lot of YouTubers and Instagrammers touting that business model, when the reality is it's actually a fair amount of work. It takes months to figure out, and honestly to get permitted.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to get your wheels wet. Like it takes a while to get things organized and get the flow for it.
Right. And to make it profitable, you're going to have a considerable amount of upfront expense. You have to buy all the stuff that goes in your unit. You can't put on sheets in your house that you don't use anymore.
Yeah.
You can't use your old towels that you don't use anymore. You have to go to the work to do, even if you aren't trying to have a top of the line Airbnb, if you're not trying to have some super luxurious experience,
like but a very basic one. You still my one of the units that I'm managing, the 250 square foot micro studio. It was about $1,900 to get that set up.
Okay.
So almost, what's that, $10 a square foot?
No idea, but it's at least 1 month's worth of rent if they were doing it for $1,800 a month. So that means your first month, you're not making any money.
Yeah. You're hoping to break even the first month, which is honestly great. That's a lot of money. You'll probably make more than that. Most Airbnbs, if you do it right and you build your business with intention, you can double or triple what you're making as a long-term rental, but you're paying for that in a different way with your time
and effort. Energy, and other expenses. You might be making that much more money, but where's your profit margin if you are paying for other services such as management and cleaning and other things? Yeah. Just because, don't take gross numbers. Just because you're making that amount of money doesn't mean that's how much you're bringing home at the end of the day. Gross doesn't really matter.
It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep that counts.
Yep.
So, it's a whole thing. It's part of why back in episode 6, we talked about how there's a lot of people who think, oh, I'll buy a vacation rental for my family, and then when we're not using it, we'll rent it out on Airbnb. It's not that simple. This is a lot of work.
That's how you end up in a house that's mediocrely cleaned. Yep. I've done exactly that. It is clearly somebody's house and they stay there occasionally and they Airbnb it out when they're not using it, and they don't have a system, they don't have cleaners, and somebody has come in and done some stuff and kind of swept the floors, and you're very clearly in somebody's half house. It's very clear. It's
awkward
and it's kind of icky.
And those places are not making the kinds of money that you hear people on Bigger Pockets talk about. Sure. Those people are making minuscule amounts of money that might be good enough for them. And maybe that is good enough for you. But if you're like, Airbnb is the way to go because I want to make a lot of money.
Or I want to make money on my property. I've made an investment into a property and I need to make money on it because I'm moving up the property ladder, and whether I'm going to stay in this property forever and I have this little side unit, or this is part of our overall plan.
Yeah.
That's the point. This is part of your overall plan. Your life is a business. Your real estate is a business. How are you going to do that?
And just like everything, hope is not a strategy. We need to come up with actual strategy and business plan. And after you've gotten that dialed, then you need to think about how to continuously improve that business plan.
As all businesses do. You can't just set it and forget it. It requires optimization, refining, improvement, continuous improvement.
Yeah. You need to think about things to bring in more money for the unit, whether it's creating adjunct experiences that go with the unit, like coffee tastings at your local coffee shop that you drive them to, or maybe you want to add a hot tub or a sauna to charge an additional like $55 to $60 a night.
Sure.
Those are things to consider. And so it's an ongoing evolution that you go through with these, and it's not just one and done.
And by no means. And there's upkeep and maintenance costs along the way. Your linens, your towels are going to wear out. You are going to need to replace these things. You need to have a budget for toiletries, and these are all ongoing costs that you have to consider. And the cost of those goods continue to go up all the time as well.
Yep. And so you need to, that's part of why the bookkeeping is a really important part.
Yep.
But yeah, in short though, it is a great way to make money. We just want you to be aware of how much work it is, because that's part of why we started this podcast, is to educate people around how to make money with their homes in a way that is true and accurate and descriptive of what it actually takes, because there's a lot of people out there touting risky, irresponsible, or just plain unrealistic business models for making money off property. And
so we're giving you the real person version, the real things it takes for people who do own homes and who strive to make money on real estate, the things it takes to make that happen to real people in the real world. And Airbnb is great. It is a lot of work. You have to figure it out and make a long-term plan for it. Otherwise, you are going to spend a bunch of upfront costs to get Airbnb going. You're going to get bored. You're going to get grumpy about the amount of work, and then you're going to quit. And now where are you?
Yeah. So that's a very realistic picture of what it is to own and manage an Airbnb. If you enjoy this podcast, give us a like on whatever platform you're on and a follow. Check us out at theladdercast.com. If you want to talk to either of us, we're real people who will actually respond to your message. And, let us know if you thought this was valuable. Do you want to learn more about Airbnb?
Do you have one? Do you have a horror story to share with us that we could share with anyone else?
We would love to hear the horror stories. And if you're thinking about buying a home that you want to Airbnb here in the Portland metro area or the U.S. in general, reach out. Shannon can help you. Shannon can help you with the financing. If you're local to Portland, I can help you find the unit. We love helping people find homes that will make them money and help them achieve their goals.
That's what we're here for.
So thanks for listening and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.